Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Andre. I'm very happy to be here as well. I think we've heard some very interesting topics. Some aspects are also reflected in my presentation. And yeah, I hope you can see the slides.
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the topic of my presentation is how to integrate MT in LSP process from a developer's point of view. So as Andre has mentioned in the beginning of the event, we support LSPs and consult them or create software for them, develop solutions regarding any aspects, to be honest, of their workflows, of their daily business, from CAD integrations or customer portals, and also MT, of course. So we do work on MT integration projects, beginning from, let's say, integrating a plugin to actually leverage certain MT providers, to maybe even little translation forms where customers can insert texts or do some gist translations. And this is what I would like to talk about today. So I will talk about some of the topics we usually get in contact with customers, talk about and explore, and the projects we worked on a very general level. So I don't go into detail of any customer specific information, but I will show 2 examples that should pretty much highlight how we approached those projects, and yeah, what we did in those certain cases. And then I'd like to give a small outlook on some topics that I think are very interesting, especially for developers when supporting LSPs to integrate MT services. Again, some of the topics came up already in the other presentations, so I will pick up on that. Thank you very much for mentioning those topics. And yeah, of course, then there's a little Q&A session where you can ask some questions. So I will skip the introduction because Andre already introduced me. So we can go directly to our experiences. I think there were some aspects shown in the other presentations as well. There are a lot of questions to be asked at the LSP side when integrating an MT provider, which one to use, how good is the quality, which does support the languages that my company wants to offer for translation or maybe other related services, technical creation of technical documentation or something else. And if a suitable provider is found, shall we use it in terms of security? Are there any concerns regarding this? And if we want to integrate a provider, how do we do it in a certain work environment, right? You maybe have a CAD tool where you say, okay, you can use a plugin. You might have a custom solution, a custom TMS or TBMS translation management system where you've got an entire workflow running. So you've got automated most of the processes, and you might need some help to integrate it there. And those are the topics, especially the integration topics, that we usually talk about with our customers. And we've, at least from our experience, there are 2 main contexts where MT is actually used in the processes. So we've heard today a lot about MT as a language resource in an actual translation workflow, as a resource like you would use a translation memory or terminology database. So in this case, MT is an essential part of the workflow, essential step, usually in the pre-translation, or maybe it's a subsequent step where you apply MT to any existing pre-translated files. And depending on your needs and the requirements by the customer, you would combine it with another service like post-editing, or maybe even other services like in-country context review or something like that. And I will talk about this in a minute in an example that I've prepared. And the other context we see is MT for GIST translations. So GIST translations, I think, is a new term that more reflects rough translations, where you just want to get the gist of the text. So it's not very important to you that the output you get is of a human translation quality. So it's not, yeah, you wouldn't expect that. I'd say it's as MT quality is getting better and better. I think that's also having a part in GIST translation, that is saying, okay, if I just want to translate an email, I can a very simple email, I want to, or I can expect that the quality is very good. We will see about that, but if in order to do that, you need to have some kind of interface. And I think some LSPs also would like to offer this kind of interface to customers, be it in a customer portal that you offer, and maybe you've got your own secure machine translation service that you would like to provide as an alternative. And those are the two contexts we think that MT is mainly used, especially interesting for developers, because we then are able to know which requirements exist for providing technical solutions for different contexts. So now I would like to talk about the language resource and the translation workflow. We've heard about that today in the other presentations as well. I think this is, so the context can be different, obviously, depending on your special cases. Maybe you've got as I said, a CAT tool based workflow where you create those projects there and do all the leverage of language resources within a CAT tool context. Or maybe you've got some other approach. And one approach I would like to present today. So in this case, I'd like to show an example of integrating DeepL. It could be exchanged with any other provider. This is just a specific case of DeepL. So I think it's very interesting to know how these, so if you think about an existing plugin, what it actually does is not really visible for the translator. And it's not important for the translator, but to be able to integrate it and to use those APIs to send the text to be translated is, I think, very interesting. And we like to support our customers with building solutions so that they can actually leverage those MT providers. And in this case, the example requirements are that, as I said, DeepL shall be integrated as an MT provider in the workflow with subsequent post-editing. So we can assume that there are certain steps, I've mentioned them, where I've have a little diagram here, pre-processing, where you also can analyze the text or do some correction. We've heard something about this today regarding source text quality. And maybe there's then a CAT tool processing the file using TMs and doing a pre-translation. And then the actual machine translation shall be applied. And in this context outside of the CAT tool, so that I can show how we approach an integration of an MT provider on this basis. So if you've got a, let's say, custom TMS and you want to create a plugin to use or to use DeepL, this would be an approach that we would follow to actually help you doing that. Of course, with those requirements, there come some challenges. Not always are CAT-specific file formats already supported by MT providers. If we talk about document translation, there are some providers that allow you to even with APIs, create projects where you can upload documents, and even they even support SAXLIF by default. So they have rules in place to actually parse those files, get the text to be translated, and update the files accordingly so that you can further process them with your CAT tools in subsequent workflow steps, for instance. But that's not always the case. So you sometimes have to rely on text translation. So you have to analyze the file and send small requests or bigger requests with the segments you would like to translate. And this was also the case with DeepL in this example. So unfortunately, the SCLXLIF, although there are plugins for CAT tools, is not supported for document translation. So you've got to use text translation, which is working fine. They do support tag handling, which is very important. If you think about how the files look, you open Entrada Studio, usually there are some tags involved where a translator should either insert some formatting, or maybe there's a non-translatable, which is also a tag in Entrada Studio. And yeah, this needs to be supported in the MT workflow as well, so that the engine actually supports handling of those tags. Otherwise, the context of the entire segment will not be recognized, and well, that's reflected in the quality of the translation. We also have some technical limitations we need to keep in mind. So yeah, some request sizes and attempts. This means the larger the project is, the more text you need to send to the provider. And maybe there are some security measures that prevent you to send a lot of requests at the same time, which is okay. But yeah, we do analyze those things prior to integrating a solution for our customers, so that a workflow can run smoothly. And once CMT is applied, you can be sure that the workflow does not stop or anything, because there are some maybe technical limitations that we need to work on. And of course, one very important part, we will see that in a second, is if you implement a solution with, in this case, a CAT-specific format like SCLXLIF, you need to have also CAT-specific update routines in place that actually not just update the text that you wanted to be translated, but also the additional context information of the segment, so that when you import it back into a CAT tool for post-editing or any other step, that you actually see where the translation came from, that you have a specific segment status, so that you can filter, for instance, for all draft segments or something like that. And well, those are the technical challenges we need to keep in mind. And we do analysis of all the systems involved, the API, if from the MT provider, whether it is something on premise or publicly available on the internet, which file types are supported, and so on. The actual translation workflow, which steps are involved, whether, as I said, an import into a CAT tool is requested afterwards, and obviously how does the CAT software itself handle the translation of a file. Don't worry, you don't need to follow up on this slide for all the small texts. I will explain that. I just wanted to show how the actual process of an integration that we would build, or you could also compare it to some plugins. They sometimes work the same. Basically what happens is that we, in this case, have a project that contains a lot of a specific number of SCLXLIF, and usually there are at least 4 steps to be involved, which include the identification of segments to be translated. This is something you probably already know. You don't want to send any segment to the provider. You just want to send those which are not translated, or maybe do not have a fuzzy match to a specific rate that you can configure. Let's say you have 100% matches, context matches whatsoever in the segment, and you also want to use fuzzy matches until, let's say, 85%, right? And all the other segments are going to be translated with MT. So we usually, so what we implement is a parsing mechanism to actually identify those segments and send them to DeepL, building a certain request in this case. So we identify all the segments, send them to DeepL, and update the SDLXLIF. If we, for some reason, need to split the SDLXLIF or the translation process because there's a lot of content in it, we do loop this process so that the files are be fully translated, and yeah, start the process with the next file. And this is basically also technically what happens, I think, in a CAD tool plugin where you do this directly in, let's say, Trados Studio. What we do keep in mind is, what we do need to keep in mind, sorry, is to update those segments or the context information so that a translator and also you as LSP know where those segments came from. So SDL does this with providing information on each segmented source. So sometimes if you have a SDLXLIF, you see a source segment with multiple sentences in it, and the actual parts that you translate are the segmented parts. And those are actually then enriched with some context information. And yeah, this is how we would approach this. We would build a custom component if there's a system to be extended with such functionality, where you can actually use DeepL. There are other steps involved, like making it possible to configure the connection, and other steps if you want to, if you've got a customer specific setting handling, there you can also do some configurations, but that's very specific. I just wanted to show you the process of how we would approach something like this to to translate, for instance, a project with SDLXLIF files outside of the CAD environment if you've got a custom system, or if that's basically what the workflow requires. On the other hand, we have MT as just translation resource. With that, as I said in the beginning, it's usually something where a customer would like to, or a customer of you would like to use a MT resource with a little web formula, for instance, where they can put in some small email text or text that they would not submit as a file translation, and where the I wouldn't say the quality is not important, but where the amount of time needed for the translation for a very short text is more important. That's usually context that is not published somewhere, at least I hope so. But that's the main reason we think that they would like to use something like that. And it's becoming more and more common, I think, to also provide this as a functionality as an LSP to customers, e.g. in a customer portal that you offer, especially in those cases where you've got your own system, let's say on premise, or you've got, I think we're gonna hear something about that, where you've got your trained solutions. Maybe you've got also some kind of service provider that you bought a system from and you can use, and then you would like to offer alternative environments for those just translations. And one benefit here is also that you can, which some of the other available resources do not offer, is to leverage resources like TMs and TBs or TDs, and also terminology, so you could integrate this as well. And again, we support our customers with these requirements. So we would again analyze the API of the provider, depending on the requirements. So sometimes you might want a automated language detection or attack handling, so that not only tag-free text is inserted, but you might want to insert, I don't know, some HTML snippet that you just want to be quickly translated. So we make sure that whatever system is used in the backend actually supports this. And also, if you would like to leverage TMs or TDs, we will analyze this as well and check whether we can implement those APIs. And as I said, a form like this can be integrated into a customer portal, for instance, into a translation management system, or even use as a standalone app. We usually consult on the technology stack to be used, or we recommend something very performant, like a JavaScript based solution, Node.js. And we also integrate these functionalities into third-party apps, if possible, if they provide an SDK where we can actually enhance the functionality, the UI, and certain steps. We do also implement some, it's not directly linguistic approaches, but if you, for instance, want to leverage certain resources, you obviously need to have some sentence splitting, so a segmentation rule in place in order to efficiently leverage those TMs, for instance. Otherwise, you would only have the entire segment and you probably wouldn't find any results. Right, this is one example for, at least from our experience, of usage of MT in the GIS translation field. And now I'm at the outlook. I think there are some topics that are very interesting from a developer's point of view. The possible integration of terminology, we've heard something about that already. In the other presentations, I think it's becoming more and more available at MT providers that they also offer some glossary features where you can add some terminology, whether this is applied on the fly or used as a training purpose. I think for the generic solutions, it's not really something that they train, because in the background, they obviously use generic engines, but you can implement dictionaries, as they call it there. And for us, building integrations, I think, is more and more common that we also need to support API integrations with those functionalities. Whether they work as expected needs to be evaluated by the LSPs, and whether they are working maybe better as training or can be integrated faster as training an engine from a generic engine with terminology. That needs to be discussed. Maybe we hear something about that today as well. But another thing we've heard about today is the analysis of source text regarding the compatibility with MT, and I think this is also something where we see on the market and in talks with customers that this is something where questions come up whether we can automate this with natural language processing, for instance, where you can analyze sentence structures and maybe apply such rules that refer to automatically apply or verify certain conditions of like those rules referred today. And another, I think, very important part that's coming up, because more and more digital content is produced and consumed in every country, is ASR in conjunction with subtitling. So ASR is automatic speech recognition. And a usual workflow that I can think of that could be automated is if you've got, let's say, a video file, an MP4 file that is submitted for translation, you might want to have an automated workflow that utilizes a service that does the ASR and converts the detected texts into a translatable format, maybe even with speaker recognition, or speaker recognition, so that you've got a result back that does provide you the information, not only the text that has been analyzed from the video file, but also assumption on which text has been said by which speaker. And I think MT can be utilized as well in this case, depending on the actual text itself and the context to be used. Yeah, that would be the end of my presentation. I hope